Welcome back to FacetNet. Alright, let's look at today TCP IP transport layer error recovery in a very basic sense. Right, so although many TCP IP application layer protocols exist, the TCP IP transport layer includes a smaller number of protocols, which means if you look at the application layer, there are many application layer protocols available: HTTP, HTTPS, DNS, email protocols, right? SMTP, POP. So there are many protocols available in the upper layers, which is in the application layer. But if you look at the TCP IP's transport layer, there are only very few number of protocols are available. The two most commonly used transport layer protocols are Transmission Control Protocol, which is TCP, and the User Datagram Protocol, UDP. So transport layer protocol provides services to the application layer protocols, right? Say most of the time what happens when you use the application layer to send and receive files, we need to make sure the files being or the data communication has to be a successful communication. So for us to make a successful communication, we need to make sure the communication should be a error-free communication, and we should see a recovery mechanism, or we should have a recovery mechanism. What happens when you transfer a file from a web server to a web client? Let's look at this diagram here. So as you see, web server Larry is sending three, we call it as segments because it's in a transport layer, so we call it as a segment. So it sends three segments to the web browser as numbered sequence number 1, sequence number 2, and then sequence number 3. And then on the receiving side, which is the web browser, Bob is using the web browser, he received your first segment and he didn't receive the second one. As you can see in the diagram, it says it's lost, and then he receives the third one. Transport layer is quite intelligent that it can identify based on the sequence number, it can detect that he didn't receive the sequence number 2. So what the transport layer does will send a request back to the server saying that, hey, I missed the sequence number 2. Can you please resend me the sequence number 2 segment? Then what happens? The web server will resend the segment number 2 back to the web browser. Now, web browser has sequence number 1, sequence number 2, and sequence number 3 so that it can then prepare the message to create a complete data communication. So that this process is requesting, identifying first the segment was not received, and then requesting the sender to resend the file back to you. This process is what we call it as transport layer error recovery service. Hope you understand this.